Hi, this is KhoPhi here. This is my review of the MSI GF65 thin gaming laptop. I got this machine about a year ago. I think April will be exactly 1 year since I bought it. And my experience with it has been amazing. All the good things you've probably heard about this machine is true. I really enjoy using it. However, this review is going to focus on two of the main issues I have with this machine. And if you're looking into getting one for yourself, these are two things you might want to consider if you happen to be in a situation like I am. So let's get right into the video. First of all, this is the laptop, and the version I got is the 64 gig RAM i7 2TB SSD NVMe and an RTX 2060 from NVIDIA. That's the graphics card. That is the specs I got. It runs amazing with that amount of RAM. I'm able to do a lot of things. I've tried a lot of crazy things with this machine, and it's been powerful enough to handle a lot of load that is thrown at it. For instance, there was one time I was exporting raw pictures. I was exporting 5K. Behind the scenes, I was also running a VirtualBox environment, which I had dedicated about 16 gig to the VirtualBox instance, and also was playing FIFA. I was doing all of that at the same time, and this machine was able to handle it. When it comes to performance, I am really impressed with what it's able to do, and I enjoy using it. However, there are two main issues that I want to point out in this video for anyone who is interested in getting one, something you might want to look into. So the first one is something I probably had a bit of an idea about because my first machine was an MSI, which I bought in 2014 and was able to use it for about 6 years. As much as it was good and worked fine, one of the issues was it wasn't durable in terms of the build quality. This machine also has a similar issue like that. So you can see here, the screen is able to flex way easily like that. That won't be an issue for you if you use your laptop like a workstation where you hardly move it. And in my case, it's in a backpack that is a laptop bag. I hardly move around. It's mostly stationary. If that's your use case, you might not have to worry much about the build quality. But if you're someone who travels a lot and you're looking for a machine that can be rugged enough and to withstand a lot of elements, I do not think this machine is strong enough to handle that. The build quality is, I don't know how or why, but any part you press, you get a real sense of how plastic this thing is. And I don't know how it will survive if it should fall down. But if you don't have any kind of use case of that sort, that should pretty work well. The second issue is something that bothers me a lot, and I feel it has to do with the design of the internals and how they are dissipating heat. This thing gets extremely hot. I'm not going to use the word warm, it gets hot. So much so that you wouldn't be able to put your hand at this section of the monitor of the laptop for long because it's going to burn you. And I think where I am also factors into how it's able to dissipate heat, because I live in Accra and I have to turn on both fans at full throttle just to get the laptop even appear hot. So even with two fans blowing, the machine still gets very hot. And I think the heat sinks are somewhere here. And so when this machine is at full power and rendering files and playing games or whatnot, this section gets so hot. It's not going to be an issue if you normally, when you are pushing it to the limits, you are probably not behind a PC or you're probably playing games not using a keyboard. But if you are doing something in the background, probably rendering a 3D or exporting a video or whatnot, and you have to be using the keyboard, it can get uncomfortable a bit sometimes. However, depending on the region you are living in, it might not be an issue. I was in Kenya, in Kiambu, and I hardly had to turn on the full throttle fans because the weather was good enough for a machine like this. The ambient temperature was reasonable for a machine like this to not have to worry about overheating. So I didn't have to bother about turning on the fans or stuff like that. So depending on the region you are in, this machine might struggle. And here in Accra, considering how hot the environment can be, this machine struggles a lot when it comes to dissipating heat. I don't know how they've done it. I don't know why. You can see down here, there's a lot of heat sink in there, but I have no idea how it gets so hot. Well, it's gonna be a little tricky, trying to dissipate heat from a laptop this thin, but I wish there was a better way to dissipate the heat without having it to get so hot. And is it possible that the heat sink are not dissipating enough heat to compensate for how the laptop is getting hot or stuff like that? I don't know exactly, but that's one major issue I find with this laptop. Fortunately, when it gets extremely hot, you can still put it on your lap and still work. And that is something I really love about this, because as much as it gets very hot, the down section here is still relatively warm, but not unbearably warm, to the extent that you can put it on your lap and still work without any issue. The major issue has to do with the top part here, which can bleed into the keyboard, making typing a bit of an uncomfortable experience. In any case, those are my two issues I have with this laptop. The first one isn't such of a deal breaker for me because, well, it's MSI, they need to cut corners, and so they most of the time use plasticky materials and stuff like that. But the internals is really good and it works fantastic. I love it. I enjoy using this machine and it's an easy recommend from me. It's got all the things you can think of when it comes to a gaming laptop. It's got HDMI, its power source, and it's got an Ethernet port here with two USB-C ports here, and we've got two standard USB ports here with a headphone jack. So that's what you get. It has no micro SD. Mine came with a 64 gig RAM, so it's already exhausted the slots available for extending your RAM. It has a 2 terabyte NVMe SSD, which means I don't need to bother about getting an extra storage for some time. In any case, it's an amazing gaming machine, and if you're looking into getting one of these, it's definitely a good buy and I can recommend. As long as you're not going to use it as a travel laptop where you're going to go through rugged situations, this thing will hardly withstand, because it can barely, hold up to its own screen. So that's my experience with the MSI GF65 thin gaming laptop. I hope to share my experience with other gadgets I have in my arsenal and how it works. I love to take a bit of time using a product before sharing my thoughts about it, and those are the issues I have with this laptop so far. You can find a link to purchase this laptop in the description below, so make sure to check it out if you want to find the different possible configurations you can have with this laptop. That's it from me here. My name is KhoPhi. Thanks for joining me, and we'll talk to you later.